There wasn't any scholar that spoke of it aloud. No lexicographer of the administratum ever dared issue a definitive tome. But among those who have walked the ruined amphitheatres of pre-Unity Earth, or knelt in the dust of buried Martian catacombs, a whisper remained, that long before mankind took to the stars, before even the rise of old night, Regicide was played. Its oldest forms are unknowable, the pieces scattered like bones across millennia of upheaval. Yet the name endured, Regicide, the killing of the king. And so did its paradox, a game of ordered death. It was never merely a game. Not for the high lords who wagered honour upon it in the spires of Terra, nor the penal colonists who scratched its pattern into the floors of isolation cells with rusted bolts. Each move was a rite, each loss a lesson, each emperor slain upon the board, a silent echo of the throne upon which the true emperor sits. Regicide entered the Imperium without ceremony. It left no imperial seal, no recorded revelation, no singular name of origin. It spread by resonance, not by command. Its endurance arises from the role it fulfills. Regicide conveys what doctrine leaves unsaid. Power completes its purpose through death. Sacrifice affirms the architecture of rule. Succession finds its rightful end in the stillness that follows. The game, in its most orthodox form, is played upon an 8x8 grid of alternating light and dark fields, though this configuration is but one among many. The pieces are bichromatic, often rendered in green and black stone, or in wood dyed with oils steeped in sacred ashes. The set may be carried in brass-bound reliquaries, wrapped in velvet, or stored in the chest cavities of fallen warriors, their bones repurposed for ritual containment. Among the nobility of Vervenhive, it is said that each piece carved from living bone must be consecrated by 3 confessors before its first move. The game opens with symmetry, equal ranks, poised and identical. But from the first move, disorder begins. The lines fray, sacrifices accumulate. The emperor does not move first. That right is determined by fate, often by spinning the board itself, a slow and reverent turning, until its weight ceases, and the side facing the true sun is declared first. To win is more than just to dominate your opponent across the board. It is something darker. It is to kill the emperor of mankind. This is not treason. This is truth, a dark possibility, made playable. The act is always final. When a player captures the emperor, the declaration is made not with triumph, but with restraint. In the ancient lexicon of Regicide, the term is full mate, a phrase said to be descended from Terran Proto-Gothic, where mate meant to end in blood. But within the Imperium, this phrase carries more than tactical finality. It is a liturgical moment, a mirror of the Imperium's great paradox, that to preserve mankind, one must slay the divine, again and again. This is the heart of Regicide. It is not a game of conquest. It is a ritual of inevitability. The board itself is a reliquary. Each segment, each etched nexus of conflict, is a script upon which order and upheaval are simultaneously written. Most Regicide is played upon the classic formation, a field of 64 squares, ordered in 8 ranks by 8 files, alternating in colour and destined for war. But this shape is not inevitable. Some boards curve, some spiral. On the shrine world of Perlicon, Regicide is played on concentric circles of ivory inlaid with jet, the segments bound not by geometry, but by memory. The elder players recall the path from initiation to checkmate as a kind of devotional chant. In the orthodox configuration, every piece begins within structure. The front rank consists of citizens, often called churls or thralls on variant worlds, arrayed as a shield line, 12 in number in some subsects, though 8 remains most common. Behind them stand the agents of power. Each faction's structure mirrors the other, but only at the start. From the first move, symmetry dissolves. There is no standard name across the Imperium for every piece. Lexicons differ between sectors, even between hives. On Vervenhive, the leftmost protector is called a sentinel. On Gathalamor, it is a penitent. But within the game's core, some titles remain constant. The Ecclesiarch, the Confessor, the Regent, the Queen Militant, and above all, the Emperor. The Emperor does not hide. He stands visible, flanked and encumbered, but never disguised. He moves with deliberate limitation, often one field in any direction, sometimes only diagonally depending on regional tradition, but his presence shapes the entire field. Every strategy centers upon his vulnerability. Every sacrifice draws the path toward or away from his doom. There is no single truth about the Emperor's square. Some call it the throne, others the crucible. On Glavia, it is referred to as the apex, the moment of ascension and extinction bound into one. But whatever the name, the Emperor does not begin at the center. He stands just off it, held near by the Confessor and Queen, as if to remind players that even the highest power remains incomplete without the web of service. The silver lines, the gridwork of the board's lattice, are not merely decoration. In high-quality sets, they are etched in wire, often sacred metal, sometimes drawn from shell casings or communion cups of the fallen. Their geometry serves to reinforce the permanence of sacrifice. Each square is a coffin. Each intersection, a site of reckoning. There are no empty fields in Regicide. Even those yet untouched are not untouched by meaning. The board, from the first moment, bears the imprint of consequences yet to unfold. The game begins in stillness. The first citizen moves, and so the echo begins. No piece in Regicide moves without consequence. None are nameless. Every icon bears identity, not only within the bounds of the game, but in the shadowed psyche of the Imperium itself. The board is not a battlefield alone. It is a liturgical sequence, a cultural rite, a theatre in which the actors are drawn from every stratum of imperial hierarchy. At the front of the array stand the citizens. To the uninitiated, they resemble foot soldiers, mere barriers before the more powerful agents of authority. Yet within the game's ritual logic, they are more than shields, they are inevitability. Each citizen moves with a single narrow step, advancing not by might, but by compulsion. Their attack, diagonal. Their motion, one way. When they reach the far end of the board, they undergo transformation. This act, called crowning, elevation, or regency, depending on world and tradition, is not merely tactical. It is symbolic. The lowliest subject, through sacrifice and journey, can become the Emperor's right hand. But the process demands survival through fields soaked in death. On Vostroya, it is known as the Gauntlet. In Palatine hive rites, they call it the Trial of Ascension. Behind the citizens stand the pillars of power. The Confessor, moving diagonally across infinite spaces, embodies spiritual guidance unbound by linear command. On Tarsis Ultra, this piece is carved in the shape of a blind preacher. On Talon, a hooded martyr wielding incense and flame. The Confessor's path is relentless. It crosses spaces others cannot follow. Its judgment is silent and swift. The Queen, often called the Queen Militant or Lady Regent, is the most mobile force on the field. Her movement spans any number of squares in any direction. She is war incarnate, unfettered, dominant, lethal. In older sets, she is depicted not with a crown, but with a banner. Her strength is unmatched. But she is not the target. She destroys, but she does not govern. The regent, or bishop in archaic forms, moves in L-shaped patterns, evoking the indirect hand of statecraft. Ambassadors, tacticians, and assassins have all been shaped into this icon. The regent's strength lies in unpredictability. He reaches where others cannot, not through raw power, but through calculated misalignment. The sentry, called Rook or Bastion on some worlds, travels only in straight lines, direct, absolute, unyielding. Often depicted as towers or bulwarks, these pieces are the manifestation of imperial fortitude. They control corridors, they enforce lines, they do not hesitate. Their destruction often signals the unraveling of defensive structure. Then, at the heart, the Emperor. His movement is most limited, one square at a time, Yet his death ends the game. He is both everything and nothing. His presence defines victory, but he enacts none of it himself. In this, Regicide reflects the paradox of the Golden Throne. The Emperor cannot act, yet his existence shapes the galaxy. In some variations, hooded pieces, disguised citizens, latent agents, replace a portion of the board's starting array. They appear ordinary, but when activated, when they strike or are struck, they reveal their hidden identity. Some become queens, others confessors. The mechanic introduces uncertainty, mirroring the threat of internal betrayal, the ever-present spectre of the insidious. No piece returns from death. Once removed, a piece is never replaced. There are no reinforcements, no resurrection. The field remembers each loss in silence. In Regicide, the hierarchy is not static. It is enacted. It is tested. The fate of each piece becomes the fate of an order. And the Emperor, though unmoving, though guarded, must always fall for the game to end. Regicide unfolds in pure deliberation. It is a game without concealment, and yet its deepest rules remain unspoken. The first and most ancient of these is silence. Spectators, called the witnesses, may observe, they may judge, they may even pray, but they must not speak. To offer advice, to interrupt a player's meditation mid-match, is to violate the right itself. On Terra, during the solar conclaves, those who spoke during high-level Regicide duels were ritually ejected, regardless of station. In the depths of the Hydrophor catacombs, a whispered suggestion once sparked a riot. 5 killed, dozens scourged, all because one adept murmured a move too early. This silence is not enforced by rule alone, but by reverence. Players must navigate the board without communion, without assistance. They play against another, but also against themselves. Every move is an echo of internal will, the clash of instinct and doctrine, the balance between aggression and restraint. The formal rules of Regicide differ slightly across sectors, but the core remains immutable. Each player commands 2 ranks of pieces. The objective is full mate, to position one's forces so that the Emperor cannot escape destruction. This is not a technicality. It is the very thesis of the game, to place absolute power in a position where retreat, defense, and endurance are no longer possible. Unlike other tactical rights of the Imperium, there is no concession in Regicide, no surrender. The game must be played to its conclusion. To forfeit is to confess incompleteness of thought. On Krieg, such acts are considered shameful enough to require a term of silence or ritual exile. On Macragga, formal withdrawal from a match requires 2 witnesses and a signed declaration of dishonor. Games begin with a ritual decision of color. On most boards, green opposes black. These are not aesthetic choices. Green symbolizes continuity, agriculture, growth, faith. Black stands for void, fate, finality. When players are assigned sides, the board is sometimes spun, a slow, solemn rotation, and whichever player the green faces at rest is assigned the initiating move. This randomness is not chance. It is surrender to the board's will. The opening move is often formulaic. On Baal Secundus, the traditional Varan advance begins with the outermost citizen moving 2 steps. On Cypramundi, the Gate of Iron begins with the central citizen pair breaking formation to expose the Emperor to early threat. Some play the still hand, in which the first 4 moves appear passive, but build to an ambush 6 turns deep. Every move after that is a step into doctrine. There are prohibitions embedded in play, some practical, others spiritual. No piece may leap over another, unless designated as such by regional rule. No confessor may turn back once crossing the center of the board in the Penitent's Path variant. On the Shrine World of Calvox, it is considered heresy to sacrifice a queen militant before a regent unless doctrinal necessity requires it. Yet even these customs evolve. On Glavia, the throne reversal rule permits the Emperor to switch places with a sentry once per game, a ritual known as the Veil Crossing, believed to represent tactical divination through subterfuge. In the Telesian variant, A separate deck of fate cards can be drawn at key moments, introducing chaos to simulate warp anomalies. Such versions are forbidden in Orthodox Regicide, which seeks not simulation, but contemplation. Etiquette surrounds not just play, but the conclusion. When full mate is achieved, the victor does not celebrate. The phrase is spoken evenly, often with bowed head. The throne is fallen. A response follows, and all is ash. Some weep, others remain still, but none laugh. For the game is complete, the board is silent, the emperor lies slain. And in that moment, players glimpse the cost of order, the fragility of power, and the inevitability that all things, kings, gods, and empires, end in silence. No two worlds agree entirely on how Regicide must be played. This is not failure of orthodoxy, it is the game's design. Like scripture transcribed by fading hands, the rules of Regicide have drifted, not toward chaos, but toward revelation. Across the Imperium, thousands of variants emerge like cults from common dogma. Each one adds a truth, or conceals a flaw, or heightens the stakes in a way the base form cannot. The most widely practiced deviation is the use of hooded pieces. These icons begin the game indistinguishable from citizens, simple, forward-moving, expendable. But hidden beneath their bland geometry is a concealed function. At a moment determined by prearranged secret or triggered through activation in play, the hooded piece reveals its true identity. Some become ecclesiarchs. Some reveal themselves as traitors. Others ascend to act as hidden regents or even mock emperors. These revelations are not merely mechanical. They represent distrust, uncertainty, the veiled presence of corruption within order. In the Ossian subsector, to play with hooded pieces is called practicing suspicion. Among the noble families of the Andarian Ring, players choose which 3 citizens are hooded before play begins, sealing their identities in sacred wax upon the underside of the board, to be broken only in the moment of unveiling. Then there is double Regicide, a version played on 2 boards simultaneously. In the most complex forms, one board moves forward as the other moves in reverse. The rules of mirroring are severe. A move on one must be matched by a kindred maneuver on the other, yet outcomes are not symmetric. A sacrifice on the forward board may grant a power on the reverse. A death in the mirrored world might destabilize the first. The play is slow, harrowing, layered with meanings within meanings. Some interpretations of double Regicide involve unique crownings, where militants may ascend on white square takes after the 3rd rotation of sequence, initiating what is called the Regent's Reckoning. Only the most skilled adepts attempt such versions. On the Fortress Moon of Lascar, entire tournaments are structured around double Regicide, the boards set upon mirrored glass tables beneath hanging votive skulls. Other forms shift the board's very shape. The circular field is one such rite. Rather than squares, it is comprised of arcs, radial spokes converging on a central hub. In the classic ring variant, 6 spokes divide the circle into equal segments, each containing nexuses bound by curved corridors. The movement changes drastically. Lines become loops. Routes to the Emperor twist, double back, or vanish altogether. On the Forge world of Graventh, circular Regicide is considered the original, preserved in cogitator etchings from before the Age of Strife. Their high magos declare it the Sacred Spiral. Even more distant is the version known as Castles. Though rarely seen outside pre-Crusade archives or within scholastic obscura, Castles alters not only the movement of pieces, but the very win condition. The Emperor must not be slain, but contained, surrounded by loyalists until all movement ceases. Heretical to some, this mode is embraced by redemptionist sects who believe the true end of governance lies not in death, but in sanctified captivity. And always, there are local evolutions. On Glavia, the board is hexagonal. On Vervenhive, players employ 3 confessors. In the underhives of Necromunda, gangs carve boards into the floor and wager blood credits, the losing player required to offer a tooth as tribute. There, the game is called Kingsfall. Some pieces have names used nowhere else. The Emperor becomes the monarch, the Queen Militant a crown seeker, the citizen a hollow. Yet regardless of name or shape, the logic remains. Regicide demands judgment. Regicide reveals structures. Regicide ends only when the line has collapsed and power lies still upon the board. These variations are not corruption, they are interpretation. In the Imperium, faith does not survive by stasis. It endures through fracture and reform. Each new board is another testament. This has never been a game about luck. In Regicide, there are no dice rolls on the board, and victory emerges from vision, and loss from blindness. Yet among its myriad tactics and layered maneuvers, certain patterns recur, persistent echoes across the stars. They are spoken of in whispers by adepts, diagrammed in sanctified chalk upon the tiles of Schola Progenia cells, muttered over by generals long after their campaigns have ended. These are not mere strategies, they are rites of motion. Full mate, the term that seals the game, is more than a checkmate. It is a doctrinal finality. The phrase enters not as triumph but as truth, the moment at which the emperor, hemmed and cornered, must fall. There is no escape, no block, no exchange to delay the inevitable. The play reaches its culmination in stillness. Full mate is never spoken in glee. Among the Adeptus Administratum, to declare full mate is to acknowledge the dissolution of a system, the annihilation of governance, the moment where continuity fails. The most feared path to this moment is blind man's mate, named not for the player who enacts it, but for the one who cannot see it coming. The strategy relies on misdirection, presenting weakness while arranging the pieces into an unseen net. Its execution requires silence from the opponent and absolute confidence from the one who sets it. In some circles, it is called the Veiled Fall. In the noble courts of Delphor Minor, entire careers have ended in disgrace from losing to it. Then there is the Traitor's Gambit. This maneuver begins by moving the Ecclesiarch, a mid-level power, deep into enemy territory, bypassing protective screens and flanking units. It seems reckless, suicidal. But the point is not survival. The Ecclesiarch's placement compels the opponent to expend their confessor or regent in response. In doing so, they expose their emperor's flank. The gambit plays upon the sacred, asking, what if faith itself is bait? The move is heretical in implication. Some refuse to acknowledge it, others study it obsessively. On worlds where the ecclesiarchy dominates, its use in public matches is often grounds for censure. And yet, those who win with it are rarely forgotten. Victory through sacrilege still counts in Regicide, especially when it mimics truth. More subtle is the V-check clearance, known on Vostroya as the Catachan hook. It relies on intentional underestimation. The player creates an opening so banal that the opponent assumes it harmless. A citizen alone, vulnerable, disconnected. But when approached, the line suddenly shifts. A churl, seemingly minor, slides past a distracted defense, settling beside the Emperor in a moment that ends the match. Entire volumes of tactical commentary have been written about the psychology of this move. It is not power that matters, it is perception. And at the heart of every game lies Fool's Mate, not the fastest loss, though often it is, but the purest. The opponent has only one move. If they take it, they die. The check is already set, unseen until too late. It is not a common ending, for few players reach that level of blindness, but when it happens, there is no recovery. Only the final phrase, the throne is fallen. Yet for all these codified paths, the essence of Regicide is not in the tactics, it is in the recognition. To learn Regicide is to learn to see the angles, the misdirections, the slow erosion of strength until collapse becomes inevitable. The best players are not the boldest, they are the quiet ones, the patient, those who move without needing affirmation. Many of the Imperium's greatest minds studied Regicide not for leisure, but for insight. The Council of Nova Terra kept 2 boards in their war room, each mid-match at all times. Malcador the Sigillite was said to have played against himself nightly, muttering the moves in a tongue no one else could understand. Some say he never played to win, only to watch the game unfold. For this is the secret. Regicide is not a contest of domination, it is a mirror, it shows the shape of thought, It shows where the cracks begin, where the lines thin, where sacrifice buys not victory, but one more breath of delay. It shows the inevitability of collapse, rendered not in fire or ruin, but in the quiet fall of a carved icon onto polished wood. Each piece fallen is a decision made. Each check, a reckoning. And full mate is prophecy fulfilled. There are hives where regicide is a whisper, and there are moons where it is law. Across the breadth of the Imperium, from the icy seclusion of Valhalla to the irradiated tenements of Necromunda, the game persists, not merely as amusement or training, but as cultural revelation. To observe how regicide is played upon a world is to glimpse its soul, or what remains of it. On Necromunda's lower levels, boards are inked in soot across duracrete slabs, pieces scavenged from ammunition casings, tooth fragments, or offcuts of gang insignia. The players are dust-streaked, half-fed, too young and too tired to speak in anything louder than a growl. Here, every game is wagered, a single piece of meat, an hour of safety, a name spoken on a kill list. The rules drift, bent by desperation and spite. But the end is always the same. One emperor falls, another watches. On Vervenhive, regicide is an upper hive tradition, played in glass lounges high above the manufacturing haze. Players sit at ivory boards etched in micron filigree, each piece weighted with alloy cores calibrated to maintain balance against gravity shifts. The elite play in silence, but their wagers are colossal. Favors, votes, marriages, inheritances. Here, regicide does not mirror politics. It determines it. In the weeks before the Volpone Compact was ratified, 7 regicide matches were played in sequence, each dictating a term of the agreement. The last match ended with the monarch piece burned before witnesses, its ashes scattered into the wind from the sky bridge of St. Ordelia. On Krieg, the game is not taught in childhood, it is imposed. Orphans of bombardment are made to learn the board before they are taught to read. To win is to demonstrate capacity. To lose is to reflect upon what was insufficient. The scoring system includes not only victory, but the number of sacrifices made along the way. A win with minimal loss is considered heretical, deemed insufficiently loyal to the doctrine of martyrdom. Some students intentionally lose, crafting elaborate paths of noble failure. These are sometimes rewarded more highly than those who achieve full mate. Among the nobility of Glavia, every bloodline maintains a regicide codex. The family's preferred opening moves, favoured mid-game patterns, and historical losses are all recorded and recited like a lineage. The boards are hexagonal, the pieces marked not by rank but by ancestral names. The emperor piece is not called emperor, but the founder. The ritual begins not with a move, but a vow. We preserve what he began. In these matches, every game is a reenactment. History made miniature, collapse made intimate. On some feudal worlds, regicide is heresy. In isolated shrine cloisters of Ophelia VII, the killing of the emperor, even in game form, is declared abominable mimicry. Aboard the penitential hulk Eremitus Lament, the depiction of regicide was once found engraved into the mess hall tables. Every sailor who had played it was sealed into the hull without rites. Even their skulls were denied sanctification. But such purges are rare. For most of the Imperium, the game is too embedded, too ancient, too vital to suppress. Certain Forge worlds craft regicide sets not as toys, but as sacred machines. On Ryza, the game is played with servo pieces, each move recorded by Mechanicus Logi for statistical patterning. Every game is uploaded to the data core and stored for millennia. From these, the Magi hope to extract tactical formulas applicable to real war. Some say that in the vaults of calculated defiance, thousands of games play at once, overlapping in recursive loops, guided by no human hand. And within the black ships, the game takes a darker shape. Sanctioned psychers, trembling in their final weeks, are sometimes permitted to play a single match. The pieces are painted with promethium-soaked ink. When full mate is declared, the board is set alight. No move is recorded, no winner declared. It is not for memory, it is for release. The game carries weight not by uniformity, but by echo. On every world, it mirrors that culture's understanding of power, of fall, of what it means to rule and be ruled. In this way, Regicide is a map of the Imperium's self-perception, fractured, reverent, unforgiving. The Emperor dies, again and again, and each time another world watches it happen, as if for the first time. There are worlds where Regicide has become religion, and others where it has descended into dream. Glavia stands among the former, Vostroya the latter, and Telesia. Telesia lingers in the crack between. Glavia's variant of Regicide is carved in marble and lit by oath candles. The board, hexagonal in design, bears engraved verses at every corner, each one a citation from the house codexes of old. The game there does not begin with a citizens' movement, but with recitation. The names of every piece must be invoked. The monarch, the crown keeper, the hollow bearer, the first fire, and the binding law. Each has a name, a lineage, and a purpose drawn from ancestral myth. Before play begins, each player reads aloud the history of their chosen emperor piece, who he represents, what he has endured, why he is worth killing. In this rite, the act of fullmate is known as return to stone. Upon victory, the emperor piece is laid flat, not removed, not cast aside, but laid down as if in burial. It is then dusted with ash from the votive bowl that burns beside every board. The ashes are stirred from the scorched remains of previous pieces, ground down over generations. Glavia teaches not only loss, but remembrance. Vostroya embraces a more brutal beauty. There, Regicide is played in ice. Boards are carved into froststone, the pieces shaped from blood ice harvested from the polar caverns. Each game is begun with a cut. Players slice their palm and smear a mark upon their side of the board. This is not symbolic. It is a guarantee. On Vostroya, no match ends without blood. The most celebrated maneuver among them is the Catachan hook, a term borrowed, curiously, from an unrelated regiment. It describes a lure. One piece, seemingly vulnerable, is placed near the Emperor's path. The opponent approaches, confident, only to find that the trap has closed, a slide, a shift, a diagonal movement where none was expected. In a moment, the monarch stands exposed. It is a maneuver rooted in trust and betrayal, and to execute it without flaw is considered an act of high martial honor. The elders of Vostroya claim the Catachan hook was first invented not by tacticians, but by mothers, who taught their children to wait, to observe, to strike only when certainty was theirs. A myth, perhaps, but the story is always told. Then there is Telesia. No one agrees on the rules of Telesian Regicide, not even those who play it. It is a variant built around a supplementary deck of cards known as the Hand of Fate, shuffled and drawn at unpredictable intervals. These cards can alter board conditions, change the identities of pieces, reverse movement rules, or remove segments of the board altogether. Some allow a citizen to leap. Others strip the emperor of defense. Still others, rare and deeply feared, introduce divinitarchs, wild pieces with no fixed allegiance or known path. To watch a Telesian game is to surrender to chaos. A match may end in 12 moves or stretch for weeks. The board may split mid-play. Sometimes neither player survives. And yet it persists, played in towers, in vaults, in the isolated altitudes of the moon-spired cities. Critics call it heretical, unsanctioned, dangerous. But those who defend it insist that in Telesian Regicide, the game ceases to be a metaphor. It becomes a mirror of the galaxy. A world ruled not by logic, but by cruelty, randomness, and the ruinous whims of power. Each of these worlds takes the same game and breaks it open, sifting through the pieces for what it needs. Structure, memory, madness. And each time, the board resets. The Emperor stands again. The cycle renews. For in the Imperium, even play is a matter of doctrine. There is no victory in Regicide without the Emperor's death. This is not interpretation. It is law. Not a metaphorical ending, not a symbolic defeat, but a precise and final removal of the highest piece. Without that moment, the board cannot resolve. The cycle cannot close. The silence cannot begin. This, more than tactics or variation, is what defines regicide, the ritual necessity of terminating divinity. To slay the Emperor in regicide is not treason, it is fulfillment, a sacred consummation of the structure's demand. Across thousands of variant forms, through the strange rites of Glavia and the stormlit boards of Vostroya, the core truth never changes. The Emperor must fall, not because the player despises him, because the game requires it. This doctrine reveals more than most are willing to admit. The Imperium worships the Emperor as a god, yes, but he is also a body upon a throne, sustained by faith and sacrifice, unreachable, immobile, central to every structure yet unable to move within it. In regicide, that paradox becomes play. The Emperor begins the game as a piece of supreme importance, not because he commands, but because his death defines the condition for closure. Some see blasphemy in this, others see theology. In the Nova Marine Librarium of Sycorax, ancient treatises debate the implications of full mate. Some scholars argue that regicide was never meant as a reflection of imperial truth, but a warning, a reminder that even the most stable constructs must account for their own end. Others see the Emperor's death in regicide not as literal, but as purgation, a shedding of burdens so that new forms may arise. On the ash world of Kerost, regicide games are concluded with a chant, "He dies to rise again." Players kneel at the end of the match. The board is not cleared, it is left as it fell. This act of ritual death is mirrored in other aspects of imperial culture, the burning of saints' bones, the renewal rites of the Adepta Sororitas, the self-annihilating charges of the death corps of Krieg. Everywhere, the message resounds. To preserve the whole, the head must sometimes be cut. In regicide, this is not tragedy, it is design. To arrive at full mate is to complete a narrative arc. Every sacrifice, every diversion, every calculated risk builds to that final sequence. The moment when the Emperor, hemmed on all sides, must fall. No peace can save him. No board can delay it. No protest can delay what has already been sealed 10 turns earlier. And so it ends. Not in fanfare, not in conquest, but in the quiet removal of a single piece. Some players sit for hours after that moment. They do not speak. They do not reset. They let the stillness rest upon the board like a shroud. For regicide does not offer catharsis. It offers a mirror. And in that mirror, the Imperium sees itself. Beautiful in symmetry, terrible in logic, built to endure, and always approaching the edge of self-erasure. To play regicide is to accept that no matter the strength of one's hand, no matter the loyalty of one's agents, no matter the brilliance of one's plans, the end will come. Not with screams, but with the quiet topple of an emperor. They are not boards, they are reliquaries. To the untrained eye, a regicide set may seem no more than carved tokens upon a gridded slab. But to those within the Imperium, to adepts who still remember the scent of ash upon consecrated wood, to nobles who commission pieces from the femurs of martyrs, these sets are far more. They are devotions in material form. In the towers of Terra's first spire, the most prized regicide boards are entombed beneath glass, each sealed within an atmospheric vault. The brass hinges have not moved in centuries. The boards are not played upon. They are venerated. Each square has been walked in miniature by greatness, remembrancers, generals, inquisitors, high lords. It is said that before the siege, Malcador the Sigillite played his final match upon one of them, the dust of his robes mingling with the powdered gold of the confessor piece he sacrificed to open the path. High-quality boards often carry specific signatures, silver inlaid lines, fragments of aquilay embedded in the corners, purity seals waxed into the undersides. One such example, the ardent frame of Calvarus, holds pieces shaped from the ribcage of a navigator who glimpsed the eye of Terra and died wordless. Another, on Ophelia 7, bears blood-etched ecclesiarchs sealed beneath lacquer, each one hand-painted with expressions of devotion and despair. The set is never used. To touch it without penance is considered an affront. Materials vary, but their meaning never does. On shrine worlds, wood from burnt chapels is favoured. In hive cities, broken cogitator shells become bases. In penal colonies, bones are taken from the buried anonymous. One board, recovered from a wrecked Mechanicus skiff, is made entirely of data slates, each square blinking faintly with machine script. The pieces must be spoken to in order to move. The rite is long, tedious, and sacred. Among the void-born, miniaturized boards are sewn into garments. Officers carry them in their breastplates. Captains consult them before battle. There, Regicide is not a test. It is a map, consulted before every campaign, as if each battle must be played first in microcosm before it can be bled into reality. Some sets are made as weapons. In the darker sects of the Officio Assassinorum, Regicide pieces have been found with poisoned tips, retractable blades, even neurodisruptor charges. These are not symbolic. They are messages, sent in play to those whose defeats must echo beyond the board. The wealthiest of the Segmentum Solar's noble houses commission Regicide sets not for utility, but for inheritance. These are not played until the death of a patriarch. Then, only once, a match is held. The board is closed, its result sealed. The outcome becomes binding. In some cases, it determines succession. In others, it settles war. One such set, known as the Dynast's Mirror, was last opened during the Sanguinala reforms of 41. Its emperor piece, once placed upon the board, cannot be removed by hand. It collapses only when full mate is declared. Until then, it remains warm to the touch. These boards outlast their players. They accumulate memory, not in spirit perhaps, but in form. Each nick, each scratch, each wear mark becomes a record of struggle. 1,000 silent games played across centuries. No voices recorded, no cries. Just the slow erosion of will, rendered in the grain of wood and the dullness of stone. To possess a Regicide set is to carry a fragment of the Imperium's memory. To play upon one is to enact, again, the old truth. That power, given shape, must be questioned. That order, once made, must eventually be broken. That even the most ornate relic, burnished in devotion, ends with a toppled king and the hush that follows. And in that hush, one hears the weight of history, still, watching. It begins with the ecclesiarch, always the ecclesiarch. A piece neither frontline nor sovereign, neither expendable nor supreme. In the classical variant of Regicide, the ecclesiarch embodies spiritual authority, a figure of guidance placed behind the citizens, meant to protect the emperor through doctrine and position. But in the maneuver known only as the traitor's gambit, this figure becomes something else. The move is simple in appearance. The ecclesiarch is advanced, not cautiously, not to shield, but directly, recklessly, into the center border of the board. It outpaces the screen. It exposes itself. It dares retaliation. To the unskilled, the move reeks of error. To the initiated, it hums with promise. The strategy relies upon temptation. The opponent sees the breach and reacts. They shift to neutralize, to capitalize, to punish the errant advance. And in doing so, they weaken their defense, pulling away a confessor, overextending a regent, or exposing the emperor's final flank. The trap springs in silence. A citizen slips through. A sentry pivots. A path is carved. And in 5 turns, perhaps less, full mate is declared. The traitor's gambit is not a trick. It is a philosophy-made maneuver. To deploy the ecclesiarch as bait is to question the hierarchy of the board, to turn faith into vulnerability, to lure strength through weakness, to collapse order by invoking it. It is heretical to some. On certain shrine worlds, the move is banned outright. In ecclesiarchal academies, students are taught to recognize and refute it, not to execute it. But it persists, it echoes. Because the truth of the gambit is deeper than the surface. It is not merely tactical, it is ritual. To sacrifice the ecclesiarch is to question what protects power, to test whether faith alone can secure the throne. to let the Emperor live by letting belief fall first. And in that act of inversion, a darker reverence is found. On the fortress world of Cadia, before its fall, the Gambit was studied not for its utility, but for its warning. Tactical schools there taught that the move revealed more about the player than the board. Those who attempted it too soon were branded reckless. Those who waited too long were called cowards. Only those who sensed the exact moment, when the shift from protection to provocation would land true, were considered worthy of command. Among certain inquisitorial circles, the Gambit is played not on wood, but on lives. Entire shadow wars are structured on its logic. One asset made visible, one doctrine laid bare, a movement revealed, not concealed. The reaction is measured, shaped, prepared for. The result, destruction, revelation, collapse, was already sealed the moment the ecclesiarch stepped forward. To play the traitor's gambit well is not merely to win. It is to understand the system so completely that one knows where to break it. It is not betrayal. It is insight. In this, the maneuver mirrors the Imperium itself. For what is heresy, if not a question made in fire? And what is loyalty, if not the willingness to test it? The gambit stands as a testament. Subversion can serve devotion. The system is not upheld by blind repetition, but by knowing when to let the icons fall. Faith must be tested. Order must be strained. And sometimes the path to salvation winds through sacrilege. Even in Regicide, there are moves that cut too close to truth. The traitor's gambit is won, and still, it is played. Some say Regicide is played in every segmentum, on every world, within every caste. Others claim the game has no true players left, only imitators repeating echoes of moves made in ages past. Both speak truly. There is a stillness to the board once the pieces have settled, not the silence of inactivity, but the silence that follows a rite. It is the pause after judgment, the hush before removal, the breathing space where consequence lingers without form. That is where Regicide exists in the end. Not in the movement, but in the memory. The game is never just about the Emperor. It never was. It is about the system that surrounds him, the hierarchy that enables his presence, the agents who defend, betray, ascend, and fall. It is about continuity sculpted through repetition and the endless enactment of collapse. No game is the same, yet every match feels familiar. The citizen steps forward. The confessor arcs through open lines. The queen militant sweeps across fields already marked for death. And always, always, the emperor waits. He moves rarely. He strikes less. But his position defines the rhythm. Where he stands, the game breathes. Where he dies, the game concludes. Across the Imperium, matches are left half-played. Boards lie scattered in crypts and mess halls, on the laps of the dead and the desks of the honoured. On Titan, it is said the Grey Knights carve a match into the stone of their chapter hold with every century, and that each move is recorded as a line of penance. The game is never completed. That is the point. In the distant void, aboard drifting warships and forgotten outposts, echoes of Regicide continue even in madness. Psychers in their final hours mutter peace names to no one. Cogitators left to cycle through unending variations produce move trees that reach into the trillions, searching for something the human mind cannot name. Even servitors, reconditioned from veterans who once played, twitch faintly when passed over a board. The pattern remains. And perhaps that is all Regicide truly is, a pattern. A form repeated because it is the shape of power, the shape of fall, the shape of mankind's reflection cast upon itself in ritual. The Emperor must die, but the game does not. It lingers. It repeats. Not because it hopes for change, but because it understands necessity. In this final movement, Regicide reveals itself fully, not a game of conquest, not a celebration of wit, but a haunted script enacted by those who know the rules and play them anyway. Because there is no victory without sacrifice, no conclusion without silence, no Imperium without endings repeated until the meaning fades. The board remains, the ghosts sit once more, and the game begins again.